Vic, thanks very much for joining from Geneva this morning.
My pleasure, Matt. Nice to talk to you.
So, Vic, we were just talking before about, I guess, the evolution back to the office because you're actually in the office now.
I am, yes. So where we are actually, Matt, as we spoke to associates both in Switzerland and across the world, we came on a pretty interesting observation across, which is associates found the first part of the lockdown very productive in terms of working remotely. Everybody's working remotely. We were getting that muscle in training. And obviously, we had the technology. So that worked really well. But I would say for 3-4 months into this whole remote working piece, we found that it wasn't as easy on a sustained basis as we had originally assumed. So we found that certain projects started to, not fall through the cracks, but started to slow down. Collaboration became a little bit more challenging on occasion, especially across, multiple stakeholders. And, in conversations with associates and leaders, the observation we came to was a balanced approach was needed. So there was a lot of value in people collaborating face to face. There was a lot more innovation that happened in those interactions than virtually. So we definitely are in a place where we would never be fully virtual, but we also wouldn't go back to how we used to operate for so many years, which is, kind of being in the office and all of that physical face time. So something in the middle or something which is a bit more balanced makes a lot of sense because there are pros and cons to just being completely virtual as well. So that's what we are taking as kind of the way forward for us in Alcon.
And how are you working on the process of defining what style works for who or where or what level? I mean, I guess there's no clear answers on this. We're all grappling with the same thing, but tell us your views.
So my view is it would be a huge miss if we tried to control this centrally and said, okay, now we need to have this elaborate policy and an SOP manual that goes on for 23 pages. Essentially, what we've said is we need to trust associates and the managers to make the right call for what works for them. One thing that is quite obvious through this whole period is every associate situation is different. So therefore, we need to make sure that whatever we do and the actions that we take make sense for each individual associate. So we have, I would say, spent a lot of time in educating managers on how to have these conversations. And then how do you basically, based on the needs of the business and the needs of individual associates, how do you come to a place that works for the team? This flexibility is key in making this balance stick. And that's what we spent and are spending a lot of our time on across Alcon is educating managers, as I said, on how to have those conversations and how to have something that works. So I wouldn't be able to say that there is one formula that works for every team, like a week in the office a month or a day in the office in a week or whatever. It is really dependent on what the business needs and how best to meet that with associate flexibility. And the feedback, the initial feedback, where we are opening up more, has been quite positive. So again, it's a new world for everybody, but decentralizing that decision making and making sure that people feel empowered to make decisions for their own life and choices goes a huge way in building trust in this whole system of flexibility.
Now, you talked a few times about performance, sort of ebbing and sort of waning. But what are you noticing around resilience, around creating sustained long performance through emerging from the waves of uncertainty?
So let me talk about business performance and let me talk about associate performance. On the business side, we see that as the world is learning how to deal with this and live with this, because you and I both know it's not going to vanish and go away anytime soon. Hopefully, longer term, there will be obviously better prospects than what we have right now. So even our physicians are learning how to navigate, the whole situation with the coronavirus and make sure that patients are getting the treatment that they need. So there is a whole body of work in supporting physicians and supporting surgeons to be able to do that. So that's on the business side. So we start to see our business actually recovering, even though materially nothing has changed in the world. The infection rate is still high. Most countries, have some sort of lockdown or have restrictions on travel, etc. So nothing's really changed materially. But what we do see is people learning to work around it. In terms of associate and team performance, Matt, this is a key time for the function, for the HR function, to really lead the conversation on activity-based performance to outcome-based performance. And that's the shift that we need to make. So a lot of time in the traditional performance management went in, oh, we will do 2 events a year on this, and we will run this survey, and we will do this and that and the other in a list of activities. Now to shifting the dialogue on what is it that we're trying to achieve and how close are we to that, irrespective of how many hours we may have spent or how many activities may have led to that outcome. And that's a key in sustaining the whole mindset shift to how we look at performance. So it's less about the input only. It really is about where is this really truly making an impact? And therefore, also leading us to prioritize a lot more than we traditionally or historically have done. So what's really going to move the needle? And let's talk about what a good outcome on that looks like.
How do you keep the feedback loops tight and responsive, picking up these insights, and I guess how do you use that information?
There are 2 things, Matt. One is, I would say, slightly more formal and structured communication channels, like we do monthly town halls, and then we obviously, the traditional town hall for an hour used to be 50 minutes of presentation by the leader and 10 minutes of questions. We've kind of balanced that to about half and half now. So a lot more space for teams to engage in dialogue. What we also do is we have people within the organization who's deep within the organization whose opinion we really value and trust. And there is a lot more bilateral interaction that I myself do, as well as my leaders and my HR teams do, just to pick up on what's going on. So what I found is, instead of long structured interactions and calls that lasted 4 hours, 5 hours when we started, it's now shorter but more frequent. So it's an hour a week instead of 4 hours every 2 weeks kind of thing. That keeps it quite real and timely as well. We also use Glint to run engagement surveys for our population across the world every quarter. And that gives us what the associate experience is and and how it's evolving. And we are able to focus on and take actions real time. So a combination of all of these factors definitely has helped. But communication is key, and consistent communication, simple communication, non-formal communication is really key on both sides.
Yeah, communication, the old chestnut, but it's never been more important than now. And I guess as we finish up, Vic, how are you keeping yourself fresh as a international HR leader?
I'm reading a lot, Matt. This is something I never had a chance to do. I'm also very happy that I think the HR community across the world has also come together in an unprecedented way in terms of sharing learnings. And this particular series that you are doing is obviously one of those, which is a cornerstone of that. But there's a lot more sharing across industry, across organizations. And this has been really good for the function. So there is so much that I didn't know and I couldn't have known, which I now know a bit more of how various companies are responding to this and picking up good practices that we can use and really stealing with pride. So that part has been really good. The personal life, so not having to get on a plane, every week has really helped kind of calm me down. I have a 5-year-old son, so being able to really spend quality time with him has been phenomenally good. And my wife has been complaining about my incessant cooking, so that's another thing that I've kind of taken on. And she's exposed to a lot more experimentation in the kitchen that she has to deal with, which wasn't the case before. So these are some of the things that I'm doing personally to keep sane. And of course, making sure that you have a sense of humor about things, because that's kind of what will keep you going.
You do have to laugh it all off. Thank you, Vic. Thanks for this second discussion. It's great to see you, and look forward to journeying through this with you and seeing what innovation lies ahead.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you very much. Take care.